Welcome. Take a deep breath, settle in, and let's talk about something incredibly important. You, the universe, and how we all fit together. We live in a really strange time. On one hand, we've built massive digital networks that connect the entire globe. You can message someone on the other side of the planet in a second. Yet, despite all this technology, people are reporting record levels of feeling totally isolated, distracted, and doubtful about the world. As older traditions fade away, our modern society faces a massive challenge. How do we stay grounded, build real connections, and keep our moral compass pointing true? To solve this massive crisis, we can't just look at one subject like science or history on its own. We need a grand unified answer that brings together the physical rules of the universe, the biology of our brains, our fight for truth, and our future with artificial intelligence. What if I told you that science and spirituality aren't actually enemies, but two different lenses looking at the exact same breathtaking reality? For a long time, people thought empirical science and spiritual beliefs were in a permanent conflict. But a group of brilliant thinkers, scientists and philosophers have completely torn down that wall. They suggest that science and spirituality are just complementary ways of looking at one single, unified reality. They use an idea called critical realism. This philosophy says that our human senses only give us a subjective experience, but both scientific models and spiritual teachings are actually pointing to real, objective truths out there in the world. Science gives us a critically evaluated map of the universe using maths and observation. At the same time, deep spiritual experiences aren't just tricks of the mind. They are sophisticated encounters with a rational, intelligent creator. And the universe itself gives us clues about this. When physicists look at the fundamental rules of nature, like the strength of gravity or the way hydrogen turns into helium, they find that these numbers are balanced on a razor's edge. If any of these mathematical constants were even microscopically different, our universe would be completely sterile and stars and galaxies could never have formed. Biologists see this same perfect calibration in the profound, code-like structure of our human DNA. The sheer improbability of such a perfectly fine-tuned universe suggests that there is a deep, purposeful intelligence, a logos, orchestrating everything. But it gets even more amazing. When we look at advanced neurobiology, we see that the human body is quite literally hardwired to connect with this reality. Brain scans show that spiritual awareness isn't some made-up cultural idea. It is an innate, biological ability that humans need in order to thrive. When a person has a spiritually awakened moment, their brain does four incredible things. First, the noisy part of the brain that constantly worries about me, goes completely quiet. Second, the brain's bonding network turns on. This is the exact same circuitry that lights up when a baby is safely held by a parent, making you feel universally loved and held. Third, your attention shifts from wanting to grab and control things to just being open and receptive. And fourth, the hard boundaries in your brain between yourself and the outside world actually soften, allowing you to physically feel a sense of oneness and connection. Imagine you aren't just living in the universe. Imagine that you are the universe, finally waking up and opening its eyes. We need a way to think about how all of this changes over deep time. Some philosophers suggest that the universe isn't a static machine controlled by a distant creator. Instead, reality is all about dynamic action, becoming, and relationships. The universe is an organic web of events, being gently persuaded forward into creating new things by a cosmic intelligence. Evolution didn't just stop when biological life got complex. Human thought and culture are now evolving together into a massive global web of consciousness. We are heading towards a point of maximum complexity and love. This means finding a connection isn't about going backward, it's about participating in the evolution of the universe itself. Because of this, human life is incredibly precious. As a famous astronomer once said as he looked at Earth as a tiny pale blue dot in space, humanity is essentially a way for the cosmos to know itself. This isn't just poetry, it matches quantum physics. In quantum mechanics, things exist as a wave of endless probability until an observer looks at them, which collapses that wave into a definite reality. Human consciousness is the precise tool the universe uses to understand that it exists. Protecting human life and our fragile planet is our supreme duty, so the universe can continue to reflect on itself. But we can't do any of this if our societies fall to violence and authoritarian control. To protect our fragile world from chaos, we need truth. Brave journalists have risked their lives to tell us that without facts, there is no truth. Without truth, there can be no trust. And without trust, a society simply cannot solve its problems. Dictators and unregulated tech platforms use fake news and outrage to make us cynical and divided. When we can't agree on basic facts, our ability to work together falls apart. Defending the truth is the very first step in building a peaceful world. We've seen incredible women who show us that fighting for democracy is also a spiritual fight for human free will. They refuse to let tyrants control their bodies or their minds, proving that resisting rigid control is the ultimate display of our soul's dignity. And we must never forget the warnings from the survivors of the atomic bombs in Japan. For decades, they have shared their horrific experiences to remind us that we cannot base our global security on the threat of complete destruction. To survive our technological growing pains, we have to evolve from acting like small, reactive tribes into becoming conscious caretakers of the whole planet. Through evolution, we originally learned to care just for our immediate families because it helped us survive. But humans also developed reason. Reason is like an escalator that lifts us up and shows us that the suffering of a stranger is just as real as our own suffering. We have to expand our moral circle. It grew from family to tribe to nation, and now we must use our reason to care about all sentient creatures that can feel joy and suffering, reducing pain across the entire globe. In a world full of digital noise and fake voices, how do we find the real rhythm of life? We can find this connection in practices people have used for centuries. When massive groups of people sing or chant together, they aren't just making noise, it actually synchronizes their brainwaves. This biological harmony is exactly like quantum coherence, where particles link up and vibrate together across space. The feeling of unity during music is a real, physical manifestation of our interconnected universe. Practices like mindfulness also teach us a quantum truth. Nothing exists totally on its own, and everything is part of a dynamic, connected web. When science can't express our deepest sorrow and hope, brilliant writers and poets step in. Through beautiful art, they give a voice to our anxieties and remind us that since there is no pre-written script for our lives, we are totally free. But with that absolute freedom comes the massive responsibility to define our ethics and care for each other. Today, our greatest threat is the rapid rise of algorithms and artificial intelligence. Humans are born with an innate biological ability to truly understand language and meaning. Modern AI, however, doesn't understand anything. It just uses massive statistics to guess the next word. It is a brilliant mimic, but it lacks genuine thought. At the same time, social media platforms don't care about truth. They just want your attention, so they feed you outrage to keep you clicking. This floods our world with digital noise, dissolving true meaning and replacing real friendship with artificial relationships. We need a grand synthesis. Tech creators need to realize humans aren't just data points. We are biological beings who desperately need spiritual connection and real context. If we let algorithms run wild, they will tear our societies apart by forcing us into angry, isolated groups. To build a grounded moral future, we must follow 5 principles. First, we must aggressively anchor objective truth as our baseline, refusing to surrender to digital mimics or tyrants. Second, we must cultivate our awakened brains through nature, art, and quiet reflection, shielding ourselves from despair. Third, we must use our reason to expand our circle of empathy to all living things. Fourth, we must fiercely defend our free will against both political dictators and covert digital algorithms. And finally, we must embrace our fragility. By facing our vulnerabilities with courage, we can become active co-creators of our reality, using reason and love to steer our world toward a beautiful, awakened future. Thank you for listening. Keep your eyes open and keep expanding your circle.